Yeah, it was an odd one because obviously the first thought was, is Lo Celso injured? Then he, wow, went on Instagram and what did he post? He posted a picture of himself in training with the other guys and posted, regarding the questions I've received, I would like to clear out that I am 100% in good physical condition. I have no problem and I feel very well. I wish the best to my team in the derby today. Which pretty much says it all, doesn't it? On one hand you could look at that and go, oh, it's not the smartest thing, is it? To pretty much say, I'm fine and fit, I'm ready to play, but I'm not being played. But then on the other hand, maybe if he feels that he's trying to be forced out of the club, then what does it matter, I guess? He's a funny one, Lo Celso. He is, I've seen Dan Kilpatrick today has gone with, in the Evening Standard, the line about him not being liked at Tottenham. It's a tough one. These kind of things, I'm going to say he's not liked at Tottenham, but it's how do I put this? I'm trying to be slightly diplomatic here. There's a sense that he can be a little bit awkward at times, especially when he's not playing. And I get the impression that he's quite a quiet guy, maybe not someone that is, you see players like Sonny and Reguilon and players like that, big characters who are kind of a big part of the group and everyone likes them. And I get the impression that, Lo Celso is a little bit quieter, a little bit more about himself. And, I don't think maybe the staff members he doesn't talk to too much. That may be more of an introverted thing or not. I don't know. But yeah, the thing I keep hearing is that he can be a little bit awkward. And yeah, particularly when he's not playing. I was going to as far to say it can be difficult, but I think awkward's probably the best word. But the thing is with all of that, it doesn't really matter. I think the key thing is what he does on the pitch. And I feel this is the biggest problem with Giovanni Lo Celso and Tanguy Ndombele, is that as much as I like them both in terms of the quality I know they can bring, in the cold harsh light of day, they cost between them all in around 110 million. Have they produced what you'd expect from two players totaling 110 million? Not in a million years, have they? No, not at all. Not at all. They've both had moments. They've both had little things that, they've shown like, oh, that's quality. And you can see why the price tag's there. But ultimately, they have not contributed enough to justify that fee. And yes, the fee is not their fault, but it is also a marker of the quality they're expected to bring. And they just haven't brought it, And, Lo Celso, what did he say? Oh, yeah, we asked Conte. Conte was asked about him, and all he said was, I selected the players for this game, and for this question is one for the club to answer. And he was asked about Ali as well. And he said, I don't want to comment about single players. There is the club to make the best decision on this aspect, on players leaving and also to buy. There is a sporting director and also a chairman. They take the last decision. It is right to speak to them, not you. He actually also, in that same bit, also spoke about the transfer window. I think that was to Sky. And he said, this is not the right moment, and also to speak in front of the media. The club know very well what I think. The time we need to close this gap, there is not one transfer market. I think the last few years the gap became very, very big, and now it is not simple to find a solution in a short time. For this reason, I am only focused with the players to work until the end, and then we'll see. We have 4 months to give everything, but if we think we solve with the transfer market, it is not a reality. You need many years. For sure, you have to start. The level of the squad has to improve. So essentially, he would like those three players to be out the door, and now it's up the club to make it happen. You just know with the way Tottenham are that it won't be the case that all three will go, and at least one of them will have to awkwardly assimilate back into the pack, essentially with Conte having said, I don't want you in as much, without saying it, unless he has said it. It just would be so Tottenham. Essentially it's happened to Tanguy in a couple of windows now, because he's wanted to leave. It's been made clear to him that, okay, well, if we get a decent offer, you can go. And that decent offer hasn't come in, and he's had to kind of work his way back into the squad again. I think the other thing with Lo Celso, I think Lo Celso probably frustrates the fans even more because he's had so many injuries that have fragmented his time, and a few of those injuries come on international duty, which gives the impression that, he's only really there for international duty, especially as well when he gets rave reviews for his performances for Argentina. I think that kind of creates this perception among the Spurs fans that, he's an Argentina player on loan to Tottenham almost. I'm led to believe that Sevilla are interested in him and would like to take him back to La Liga. Obviously, he played for Real Betis, didn't he? That's where Spurs got him from. I think we're at that point where it probably does have to happen for the club and for Lo Celso. As I say, otherwise it's all very awkward. He's probably the one of the three that I would have thought would be the most Conte player, because he's quite aggressive on the pitch and his work rate's quite good. I felt he would maybe more fit a Conte system, but I would suggest not. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens with him. But if Sevilla, whether it ends up being a loan or a permanent transfer, there certainly is interest from them in taking him. I think there's been interest from them in a few. I think Gil. I think Sevilla are looking at him as well. And there was someone else as well. Someone else at Tottenham. That's just gone out of my head. Tongi. You know my thoughts on Tongi. I don't need to go on about Tongi pretty much at all. He's just one of these guys, incredibly talented. I've said it before. People in the club think he's the best on the ball out of anyone at the club, but one of the worst off of it. He just wants to play the game the Tongi way, rather than maybe at times the team way. And I think that's just, we're now on our, if you're going to include Ryan Mason, he's on his 5th manager. And, none of the last 4 have really, they've tried. Mourinho probably had the most success with him. But ultimately, how many managers have you got to try and almost tame him in a way, tame his maverick ways? And I think Conte's just got to the point where it's like, I can't be bothered. What's the point? Is it actually worth the fight to do it? He's an incredibly gifted player. He could be one of the world's best. But how many managers have got to try to almost fight to make him the player he should be? My thoughts on Tongi, honestly, you do. I say I'm so sorry to bore you with Tongi stuff because, as I say, I was formerly the president of the Tongi Undombele Appreciation Society, but I've had to collect up the appreciation, the laminated membership cards, and it looks, unfortunately, meetings are going to be suspended for the foreseeable future. Obviously, we've seen all the interest from PSG. And Poch obviously was the man that really wanted him at Tottenham. He really kind of pushed for him to come to Tottenham. So no doubt he might feel that he's the one to get the best out of him and get him back to France. But I think if that deal were to happen, I think there's going to have to be some compromises on Tottenham's side and also Tongi's side if he's going to go and play back in France. We'll see. It may get to a situation where Spurs just want a player who's like one of the top paid players at the club to just kind of move on, and maybe this would be the first step. But let's see with Tongi. With Dele, it's just a massive shame, isn't it? He was one of Europe's brightest prospects. I've always felt with Dele, it was almost like his position disappeared. His best role, it's no secret role. His best role was playing as like the man behind Harry Kane, essentially. Playing in that just sitting behind him role. He could burst into the box unannounced, score goals, link up with Kane, get assists. It was just terrific. And I'm not blaming Sonny for this, but I kind of feel Sonny becoming such a star and his emergence, almost he felt like he was slightly more of a fit with Kane. And he ended up seeing different managers trying to fit Dele in, not in the same way. So Poch started to play him on the left, I remember. Mourinho obviously tried him in various roles. Nuno played him in the centre midfield role, which had limited success. Conte has tried him there as well against Liverpool. And none of them fit him as well as they did. And it's just such a shame. He's a player who clearly, he needs the hunger back. He really does. He had hamstring problems that also caused him problems. But I just don't get the impression that he's as desperate and hungry for it as he was. And that's just perception from the outside. It could be completely wrong. I don't know whether it was true or not. Social media kind of was throwing up this thing about how he, during the match, was putting up TikTok video or something. I don't know whether that's true or not. I'll be honest, I had a little look to see whether there was any TikTok video on there from him, and from the match there wasn't, whether he deleted it or whether it just was one of those where it was an old thing that was used to make it look current. I don't know. But it's just kind of, I think there's just this impression maybe from the fans perhaps that, you know, is he really as serious about the game anymore? And I'd like to think he is. And I think, you know, Everton, certainly there's an interest in him. Newcastle have been credited with an interest, but I was kind of hearing some bits and pieces today that perhaps they're not as sold on a move at the moment, but that may change as they seem quite like they're struggling to bring in players, so maybe he's a player they turn to. I think the Everton interest seems to be a little bit more. I think Everton could be a good club for Dele to kind of rebuild and press restart on his career almost. It's just a massive shame. I really, really like Dele as a player, but for one reason or another, it just he hasn't progressed. He's stalled and stuttered, and again, a bit like Tongi, is how many managers can all maybe go, nah, before you kind of have to look at the player. Because, you know, he went away in the summer with Kyle Walker-Peters, had a big fitness thing, and I remember Nuno saying just how fit Dele was, but even Nuno started to kind of phase him out of the team towards the end of his time, and it's like all of those managers can't be wrong, and that's the problem, I think. So yeah, I mean, how much, you know, money you'd get for those three depends whether they're loan moves or they're permanent moves. Obviously, all three in terms of wages off the books would create a lot of space for Tottenham. That's one aspect as well. But, I mean, you're looking at players, you know, like I say, 110 million or so for the Lo Celso and Undombele. Dele, of course, we know was only 5, the basic fee. But at one point, you know, Dele was worth probably, I think it was like 100 million people were talking about when he was absolutely flying and breaking records. You know, so you're saying there are players that potentially were once worth almost 200 million or so. How much are they going to get for him? It's going to be a fraction of that, isn't it? And like I say, it could end up being loan moves with an option, or just purely loan moves to get him to the summer, and then they look at it all again. The thing for me is if all three go, it almost means there's so much for Fabio Paratici to do